Hello, welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I am Renee Allen, the host of this podcast. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited that the new year is here. In my mind, it's now starting because I just dropped off my son at the airport this morning to go back to college, came home, saw the Christmas decorations. All of a sudden, they don't look as appropriate. It's time to clean up a bit and get back to normal life. I hope you're able to do that too. I know some people take down Christmas decorations the day after or really soon after. I usually keep them up at least till New Year's, and usually till my college kids have left, because one, there's not a lot of time to do that when everyone's around. But also, I don't know, I just want it to feel more like Christmas time for them during their break for as long as they can. And it's easier to get work done when no one's around, to tell the truth, huh? So I don't know how it is for you. Some people really need that cleansing of let's just take everything down now earlier on. But when I first heard the song that Taylor Swift says, we're gonna leave the Christmas lights up till January, it's like, who doesn't? That's not like such a far-fetched idea. If you said February, then maybe I'd be thinking, oh yeah, and maybe I botched the lyrics there, but close enough. But today, I want to talk about something that's going to help us with whatever goals we have this year, whatever goals you have for yourself. And it doesn't have to be some huge transformation of yourself or any huge lofty goal, but anything that you do, the belief that you have in yourself, your ability to achieve that, any ideas that you have associated with that can either help you get there or push you down as you're trying to go up, if you're thinking of going up to that goal. And if you've ever heard of the idea of limiting beliefs, if you have a ceiling or something there, and there's a belief that you can climb a mountain, and that ceiling is there partway because you look at yourself as, well, I'm not a mountain climber. I don't even go running, but I have always thought it would be amazing to climb Half Dome. I mean, that may not be like Kilimanjaro, but if you're familiar with Half Dome at Yosemite, that's quite a hike. I haven't done it actually. I'm too afraid of heights to do that rock part. But when my husband did it on his 40th birthday, I stayed down in the floor of Yosemite and rode bikes with my old roommate. She just happened to be camping there, and we both had our toddlers, babies there, and rode bikes with our babies in the back. But anyway, back to climbing a mountain. If that were your goal and you thought, oh yeah, I love to hike, I'm really good with altitude, you have all these messages to yourself of what you are that person who can climb that mountain, then you will have much more likelihood of achieving it. If you say, well, I'm not this, but, or that kind of thing, it's going to be harder for you to get there. And there are some instances where you might see where you do this. I've said, I'm not a runner. I don't know how many times in my life. Well, I'm not a runner, but I ran for a few years when I was in college to release, I don't know how it worked for me to do it those years, but it really helped mentally. It was therapy for sure. I had tried, and it was just really a gift that I was able to run those 2 years. But I've always said, I'm not a runner. I'm not a runner. I didn't like running that. You always have your stories that you tell, especially if you have ADHD and you're expressive, that go along with that. And if I did have a goal to run a 10K, which I know a lot of people are half marathon, that's not me. See, here I am having a limiting belief. If I really wanted to do that and I was talking like that, it would be a lot harder for me to achieve that, even if I did all the things that could help me achieve that goal. If I looked at some program of run this many miles or this distance, this many days, if I went through that plan and still had that message that I identified as someone who is not a runner, it's going to get in the way of my goal. It is basically a limiting belief. It's a message to myself that I can't do that. Do you find that you do that at all with anything? I do that with money. I grew up without a lot of money, which was totally fine with me as a child. And I've realized that as an adult, I've always seen the people who have more money or a lot of money as in this club over in the corner. And I'm over here and I'm never going to be there, but I'm okay here. But then there are times when I do need more money, or I would like to have more money, or I can see how that would be really beneficial in our lives to have a greater income, a higher level of whatever, a monetary achievement. But I realized, and a lot of people do this, we have a lot of messages we give ourselves with money, whether they're, I shouldn't have too much money because that's not a good thing, or in our family, we just didn't have a lot of money, and therefore that is my limit. I have a ceiling with that idea, and I'll never go past it. And as long as I'm thinking that, it's probably the case. If I can shatter that limiting belief, I have a much greater chance of achieving that. And even if I was working toward achieving that, there's all these little messages, and recognizing those limiting beliefs, those words that you use, whether it's to yourself or to someone else, is really powerful. Just recognizing it and seeing if you can change it a bit. A simple way to look at this, if you have a goal right now, so New Year, you have a goal to eat healthier. And if you were talking to a friend and she said, hey, do you want to go out for ice cream, or you want to go to this cheesecake place, or whatever it is that might not be within your goal of how you're wanting to eat right now, whether it's this week, this month, forever, maybe it's a health concern. And if you said, oh, that is so tempting because I have a sugar addiction, and yeah, it would be really hard for me not to be there, but I can't because I'm eating healthier now. You've given yourself a lot of messages of, it's not even possible for me to be a healthy eater because this is I can't. It's something that's pulling me down. So you've already given yourself that framework that you're feeling restricted and that you wish you could burst out. You wish you could burst out. Or if you said, just even in your mind, I'm a healthy eater now, I really prefer not to eat that way. Maybe you haven't gotten there anyway, but if you saw yourself as someone who eats healthier and doesn't eat processed foods or sugary foods, you might say, oh, that sounds really great, but I'd really rather go to this acai bowl place where we can get smoothies, green juices. Have you ever tried it? I've been trying it. It's so amazing. Want to go there? You could create a bowl. You could do this. You could do that. And you're seeing yourself, whether or not you fully believe it yet, as somebody who enjoys, prefers, and loves and looks forward to eating healthy. And it really took me a long time to get there, and I still do eat. It's very complicated. I'm sure it is for you. Eating is very complicated. I still do eat ice cream and sugar sometimes, but most of the time I don't enjoy it. I do it because I used to enjoy it. And I think this is the ultimate, because this is what people want. It's that forbidden fruit. And I have improved with that, but it's a complicated relationship when you have a past. But the real point here is that just shifting your identity, finding the way that you perceive yourself, can help in what your abilities are, and it can help with any challenges that you face. And when you have ADHD, you might have a perception of yourself, especially if you just recently have found out you had ADHD, or you're just recently learning why some of the things you do are happening. And once you realize that it comes with ADHD, that can be informational, it can be alarming, it can be a lot of things, or it could be liberating to see, oh, that's from that. Or it can feel like it's dooming because you're thinking, oh no, I'll never be able to improve in this. Can I not? And it's a mixed bag for sure. But seeing yourself in a new light, and let's give some examples here. Or I say I'll give some examples here. One common challenge for women with ADHD, girls, I had this when I was younger too. I'm saying girls, but you may have seen this back in childhood as well, is falling a lot, running into things, being klutzy, not having that body awareness. It might feel like it's motor control, but I think it's more awareness of you're trying to pay attention to some things and you can't pay attention to all things. And so you might run into a corner of a wall. You might open a cabinet and it hits you in the head or in your eye. If you don't have this, believe me, there's such a variety. I say believe me, but I'm just saying that the level of this happening, it's always amazing to me because it's like who does this and how does this happen? But it does happen. And it's made me say things like, I'm a klutz, I'm clumsy, I'm klutzy, I'm, that kind of thing. And it's not the best message to give myself. It might get in the way of me thinking I can do something that would require that feet coordination or that whatever coordination. I love step workouts. That's something from the 90s, the early 90s. And I still love step classes. And I've been able to do them. I really concentrate when I do it, watch where my feet land and that sort of thing. I prefer it at home over a class, even though I've taken classes, because at home I can have more space around my step and I don't have to worry about the people in front of me or behind me. But there are possibilities to do what you want to do if you have said it at times or have seen yourself as a klutz. You can see yourself as somebody who can do all kinds of physical activities, whether even hiking or rock climbing. You have to pay attention more to the level of the ground, maybe more than other people do. I have to look a lot at where my foot's landing because when I don't, it's a little more of a problem. But I still was able to go to the old city or the old town, Jerusalem, and walk through there and look at all I guess it's cobblestones, and it's up and down, and it's not just hills, but sometimes there's stairs, but the hill part's on the side. So they have kind of ramps on each side and then the stairs in the middle. I had to pay attention constantly to make sure I didn't trip because I'd already broken my foot twice. So I was extra cautious. I knew it was possible to do it. I saw there were challenges, but I could do it. And having that I can do this mentality is very important. If you're scatterbrained, if you say, I'm scatterbrained and I really can't pay attention in a class like that, that might be too hard for me, or I won't be able to sit in that meeting and pay attention because of this, or whatever it is, or you just feel scattered in conversations. I do at times. Thinking more in a positive light, like reframing that, saying, my brain works really fast. I have ideas coming up all the time. Therefore, I have to find ways to slow it down, to hone in, to pay attention. Maybe I need to bring a notebook with me just to write or doodle. And when I do that, my brain can relax a little bit and maybe I can listen better. So seeing yourself as somebody who has some strategies in place, and if you're already in womanhood with ADHD, you probably have a lot of them, because ADHD, if you're diagnosed with ADHD, it means your brain was developed this way and you had some of these struggles as a child or as a teenager, as a young adult, and you have already created strategies before you even knew that you had ADHD. And so seeing yourself as, I've had to become this very strategic, creative person. And I did that on my own without even realizing what I was dealing with. Isn't that great? Seeing yourself as that and recognizing the great abilities that you have will help remove those limits that may be there by having a label given to it as I'm a klutz, or seeing yourself, your identity being related to, well, I'm scatterbrained, or I'm very antsy. I have a hard time sitting still. I have a hard time just being there. And if you see yourself as, I need to find a way to sit at my desk or not sit at my desk, because how do I, if I've got a computer to work on for however many hours, whether it's in an office or at home, and if you have that impulse control, hyperactive part of ADHD, and think it's impossible for me to get this done, I cannot focus on it, I cannot sit still, that's going to be true. That's going to be true. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy. You've given yourself that message, and you're not giving it without any proof to back it up. You could go back and say, yeah, I tried this, and it didn't work. But maybe talking to someone, or finding other strategies, reading books about ADHD, listening to podcasts like mine, learning some other ways gives you the tools to be able to get work done at a computer or sit for a while in a meeting if you need to. And I think that's why accommodations are important if you're in an office. And I know there are different opinions on that sometimes when you share a diagnosis with an employer and they provide accommodations, sometimes that's really helpful and it's a success story. Sometimes they see you as a burden because now they have to work with you. And I've heard this quite a bit in different jobs where people get replaced or they dissolve that that position because they don't really want to work with the person. So just always maybe seek some advice with other people in the company before you do that. It might be a really positive thing. I know in universities, it's a really good thing. My son has those accommodations made with his ADHD, and he's really smart, but he still does better if he's listening to his textbook than reading it. And so they give him audio versions of his textbooks for every class. And there are some other accommodations he gets with exams, more time, that sort of thing. So it's important to look at the possibilities to be able to achieve what you want to achieve, instead of seeing it as a limitation and an inability to do it. I was just learning that there are treadmill desks. Do you know about that? I didn't realize that. But there are a lot of women with ADHD who have a standing desk and then they have a treadmill and they actually walk on the treadmill while they're on their computer. And I've seen people on treadmills at the gym, reading a book or that kind of thing. In fact, I used to do that. I don't know how, because I would get dizzy now. But when I first started doing step workouts at home, I bought my own step after going to classes and having my second baby. And I just felt like it was too hard to go into the gym with two little ones at the time. So I bought my own step and I would read a book. I'd hold it in my hand and walk up and down the step. I have no idea how I did that. And see, I didn't have a limiting belief with that. I didn't think I can't do this, I'm going to trip. I just did it because I was just going up and down. It was, like the stair stepper with no power, but I did it. But anything that you can do, like getting up and walking around, or have you had a mini trampoline or a rebounder in your house to be able to jump on that while listening to a book or something like that, or going for a walk? If you can do something where you're active and still accomplish what you're doing, that might help with the need to move. So instead of saying, I can't sit still, you say, I need to keep moving. And then you see the possibilities. What can I do that's moving? Sometimes it is just your hand moving in a notebook, even if whatever you write doesn't make sense or you never look at it again. Just that movement helps a lot, even just with your hand. I teach children, when I teach music for children, I don't know how to describe it, but you interlace your four fingers, not your thumbs, and then you go around and round and round with the thumbs. What do they call that? There used to be a name for it, like twiddling your thumbs or something when I was younger. But I teach them this is something you can do that's really quiet when you need to move. It's not as relaxing than just flapping your hands out, or moving your knees. But I think just the challenge of it keeps them occupied for a little bit because they're just figuring out the coordination of it all. So if you can think of anything that you wish you could do or achieve, but you just know you can't, or that you've worked toward and you haven't been able to attain, there's probably that upper limit problem right there. That's what Gay Hendricks calls it. There's a book, and I can't remember the name of the book, but he talks about the upper limit problem. He said, all of us have an upper limit to things that we want to do. And it's that identity. I am the person who can't get past here. Someone else can, but I can't. And identifying, pinpointing where your upper limits are. And even if you're just doing one at a time or you just see it here or there, seeing that and telling yourself, why not? Why not me? And is this stopping me from achieving something when I didn't realize that's what I was pushing against? Many years ago, and I've mentioned before, I've had a lot of years of dieting or changing my eating or working on losing weight. I've had 6 children, and with that came the need to lose weight after each one, and up and down, and even in college. But some years ago, my daughter and I did a shared coaching with one of her friends who was doing nutrition coaching, and she was amazing at it. She was really great at it. She's not doing it anymore. But we were talking to her on the phone one day in our little meeting, and I was doing really well with the principles that she was teaching on changing how I viewed food, and what was like you can't have this food, and changing it to a neutral food so it didn't have as much power and all these things. And I was making progress, and I don't know how it came out, but I remember I was on the phone and I was out in my front yard walking around. I don't know what I was doing because we did have some video visits, but this was a phone one for some reason. And I realized as I was talking to her that I was afraid to reach my weight goal. I was afraid to lose the weight and get to where I had been before. And I had this limit problem that was stopping. I had this barrier. So it wasn't really my own belief that I couldn't get there, but sometimes there are barriers that are stopping us that we can identify that aren't the I can't get there, but it's more like I don't want to get there because I don't want the reaction of other people if I do. So that could be a money thing. If I do make this much money, will people think I'm greedy? If I do make this much money, will people view me differently? If, I haven't really gone that far with that, but that might be something that you can identify with. With the weight loss, years before, when I had achieved what I thought was my healthy, I feel really good about myself weight as this younger mom, I got a lot of flack from other people saying, are you sick? Oh, you're losing too much weight. You don't need to lose weight. Blah, 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 blah. They used to have those, and they probably still do those, the little things that can kind of pinch the fat on your hip or side. They'd show you those caliper things. And I think if you pinched here, you could find I still, there's still some room here. And obviously I wasn't having as much weight to lose as some other people, for sure. But there were a lot of negative comments, or why do you need to eat that way? And people have a lot of opinions. And I think as a whole, we've gotten a lot better at that. This was probably 15 years ago. But I realized as I was talking to this nutrition coach, because I burst into tears, that I was afraid of running into that again. I was afraid of getting to the point where people were noticing. I was afraid of hearing comments. I was afraid of them even saying, have you lost weight? What have you done? And her response to me, I thought, was very interesting. She said, you don't have to tell them anything. And she wasn't even say, I'd rather not talk about it. She said, if they said, what have you done? Just say nothing. Just say nothing. And it actually didn't even really come up. But I was so afraid of that. I had created a barrier for myself because I had this fear of responses of others that didn't actually happen. So changing just the reframing of whatever limits you see for yourself or any barriers you see can be really powerful, because then it can change your possibilities of attaining that. It's not blocking you anymore. A barrier is there, but a barrier can be moved. Most of the time, those barriers can be moved. And in yoga, when I teach yoga, it's interesting because even in the deep stretch poses, often we go into a place and we all have our limits. We have our definite limits because our bones eventually in a joint won't go any farther. There's some compression there as the bones get closer together in that joint. And the opposite parts are, the other areas are stretching because of that. But often there's a lot of room before you hit that compression for a lot of people. And so that's where that flexibility happens, those gains there, the mobility. But, and just saying that, because there are some people who can bend in certain ways, and my body will never bend like theirs, and theirs will never bend like mine. There's different limits that we have because of our bone structure. But with the parts that can still stretch, that can still move, there's often some room there. And you can go into, let's say you're standing up and you're going into a standing forward fold. And initially you'll have a barrier. You'll go, okay, I'm not going any farther than this. And sometimes you feel something gnawing at you and you shouldn't even go that far. Maybe you lift up a little bit or soften your knees a little more or something. But while you're in that pose, after a little bit of time, that barrier subsides. And sometimes it could just be the gentle stretching that's causing that to loosen up. Sometimes it's the slow breathing that helps that happen. And there are other things that happen with the fascia that help that happen that I can talk about another time if you're interested. But often what they do in a yoga class is they'll play with the edge or surf the edge, and that you'll be in it for a little while, that pose, and then you kind of lift up a little bit with your inhale and then relax into it more. And you actually are able to go beyond that barrier in different stages. I kind of think of it as like a Etch-a-Sketch, a little zigzag, a little lengthen out and lower down, lengthen out, lower down. And there are certain poses that I'm not going much further into, and there are other ones that I change quite a bit while I'm in that pose for 2 or 3 minutes, if it's a yin pose, a longer held pose. But it's the same thing in our lives, that we have these barriers, and sometimes they're just straight up there, like a big stop sign saying, you're not going any farther than this. And you stop there and you kind of identify with, okay, this is where I need to stop. And then maybe see, do I really need to stop? Or maybe now I can go. And maybe you can go, and maybe you can go out a little further. So look at any of those barriers or any of those upper limit spots that you see for yourself, or any words that you're calling yourself. I mean, they're not always labels. I mean, like if I say I'm not a runner, that was actually true. I don't like running. But if I say that, I'm giving myself a message that's telling me I never could be if I really wanted to, So I think all things should be possible. I mean, of course, in real life, they're not all possible, but our outcomes are really based on our identity to begin with, and then the process that we use, and then we have this outcome. And when we start with that positive identity, we really can rise up and become it. And this even works for people in your lives. I read this long ago, early in my marriage, that said, treat your spouse as the person you know they can become. And I know people say, wives always try to change their husbands, but you see the strengths in your husbands. And then sometimes when they do things that aren't rising up to that strength, it can be hard. And early in my marriage, I was kind of like, this is disappointing about this or that. Nothing major, but enough to bring frustration for me. And I read that in a book about marriage. and that said, treat them like the person they can become, or who you know they can become, that you believe they can become, without telling them anything to do to become that. And so it's that same identity thing where I'm creating a new idea in my mind. Instead of thinking, why are you being like this? You're thinking, I know you can be like that. And you're treating them like that. And honestly, it was like magic. And it's probably because of the energy or the dynamic that came out of me and having someone believe in him. And it wasn't any words that I ever said, but it is powerful, and it can be powerful in yourself to redefine the ideas you have about yourself, your potential, embrace that true potential, see yourself as the best self you can be. Does that mean you need to be perfect all the time? Of course not. We're not perfect people, but you can recognize your potential. You can overcome those limiting beliefs. You can shatter those upper limits that you keep seeing for yourself. Just shatter them, get rid of them so that there's not that limit. You can just keep going and see what happens. I've learned to do that with my children too. Instead of telling them when they say, I want to be an actor, can we move to Los Angeles? And then I can be in movies. One of my daughters wanted to be in the next Chronicles of Narnia movie. And at the time, we were looking at moving to Southern California, and I was thinking, that's the last thing I want to do is have my child be an actor. And we actually started out living in Pasadena when she was born in Pasadena. My oldest two girls were born down in LA area. And a lot of my friends did have children who were in commercials or had bits in TV shows or things like that. And I thought, oh, I would never want to do that because it just seemed like a lot of work. It seemed like a lot of work to drive around, be on call. It was the first time I saw a cell phone. They were car phones, and it was gigantic. And this one mom had one, and it was always attached to her belt. This is in 1990, I think, 90, 91. And she said they would go and sit. Her kids were homeschooled because she couldn't have them in school. They would sit for auditions, and she spent a lot of time like that. And I'm not saying anything against anyone who does that. One of my friends, her daughters all had money for their first houses by the time they were probably 12 because they'd been in Barbie commercials and things. But it wasn't what I thought I could manage as a mom. And not knowing I had ADHD, then I can see I needed life to be simple, not be scattered like that. But so my reaction as a mom, I would say when my kids were younger, if they asked for something like that, and as a mom, before they were even old enough to ask, I was like, no way, we're not doing that. I don't want that life for my child. But when my daughter asked as a teenager, I said, that sounds like a great idea. We should try that. If we end up moving down there, let's try that. And so I learned to do that with my kids. Let's take it one more step and see what happens. Two of my daughters wanted to go to study abroad. We didn't really have money for study abroad. They both went to England for study abroad in London and at different times. And each time I said with my oldest daughter, I said, that sounds like such an amazing opportunity. And in my mind, I would have loved to have done something like that when I was in college, but I had an upper limit problem. I saw myself as a student who would never be able to go and study abroad because we didn't have enough money for that. And I was working my way through school. There were probably possibilities for that to happen. But that's what I saw. I saw somebody who wouldn't get a master's degree because I couldn't get Pell Grants for it, like I had for my undergraduate, and I couldn't afford to do that. And plus, I was a little maxed out. I was kind of tired of school. But with my daughter, I said, let's just apply and see what happens, and then we'll see what the next step. And we'll see. We know how much it costs, but maybe we'll get it to work. And we did. I had some credits from some flights that I was bumped off of that were good for free flights anywhere in the country. Now they just offer you like $50 or something if you give up your seat. But we used to do that quite a bit because they give us a free flight to anywhere in the country. And I found out when she was in the process of wanting to go and her flights to London were going to be over $1,000, that we could use those vouchers on an international flight, but pay something like $300 or something. Yeah. So, and she was able to use her full scholarship for the tuition part of the trip. So it really was manageable. And my younger daughter, I had credit card points for her to get free flights there. Lots of things made it happen. So having that mindset with your children of, well, let's see. And the reality is, what's nice is sometimes they will change their minds, which is nice. Because if you kill the dream for them, then it's your fault. But if they change their mind, then they've had that power to make their own decisions or see the reality. Could be we don't have enough money to do that. We had a lot of those things too. So anyway, I think that's going to be it for today. I don't know if you remember me saying before that when I've set goals for myself for things like intermittent fasting, or even when I ate raw foods long ago for health reasons and stuff, that when I tried to do it 100%, I either felt really guilty when I didn't, or I gave up on it because I thought, well, I failed, so I might as well not do it. And I actually never failed with intermittent fasting because I started out with I would love to do a 16-hour fasting window, an 8-hour eating window. But I'm going to allow myself the grace that if it's a 12 and 12 or a 10 and 14 at times, that's okay. And I rarely did the others. In fact, I think I started out with the 10 and 14 or something. I can't remember. But I made it so forgivable that I succeeded with it. And I really did the 16-8 window most of the time and was very successful with it. It helped a lot in a lot of ways, especially with that diet mindset. And if you want me to do an episode about that, because intermittent fasting or anything that has fewer decisions works really well for women with ADHD. Not everyone can do it, maybe health-wise, but if you want me to do an episode about that, I'd love to talk about it. But back to that, the reason I'm just mentioning this on my little ending, which isn't so little anymore, is that with my podcast, I really want to have episodes come out every Tuesday and Thursday this year. That's what I would love to do. It might occasionally be a Monday and Wednesday. It might occasionally be a Wednesday. I'm going to give myself the grace to do that, but I feel comfortable with the pace of 2 episodes a week. I like the Tuesday, Thursday idea, or Monday, Wednesday. So we'll just see how it goes with life and how it goes for you. But if you have any suggestions, any ideas of things that you would like me to talk about, any questions you have, let me know, because I have some themes this year, actually. I'm trying to be organized about it for topics for each month. And if you want to get on my newsletter mailing list, I'm going to share some tips there for each of those aspects of ADHD and things that we do in life. But feel free to go to my website and go to the contact. You can write to me there. I don't know why I said that first, because that doesn't really get you on my newsletter. I mean, I could send you an invitation from there. There is an ADHD quiz at the top that you can take just for fun, or if you're curious if you have it or what aspects you have. And that gets you in touch with me by email too. So there are other ways. I just am not aware. My brain's just not in a place right now to be able to share that with you. I hear other people's endings of their podcasts, and they are so calm and organized. But ending on a good note of seeing my possibilities, not my limitations, is, I don't know. It's hard to think of them quickly, isn't it? Yeah, that's not me, and I'm okay with that. That's not me to be organized, and I'm organized about some things, but not when I'm talking. So I hope you're okay with that. But thank you so much for being here. Feel free to get in touch if you want. I'm also on Instagram, Inspiring Women with ADHD. You can find me there and DM me there anytime. I'm not super active on there. That just sounded like a ceiling, but I am going to be on there more often because I have some goals for this year. Yes, some goals. So here we go. Thanks so much. I'm really getting off this time, and I'll see you again. Bye.
Ever older, so I Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause. No time for a pause.